Aloha listeners and viewers, welcome to Intermission, a conversation series between artists. Intermission is the Hawaii Chamber Music Festival's exclusive online channel with Broadcast Hawaii. I'm your host, Chris Yick, the founder of the festival, and today we have special guest Amy Schwartz Moretti with us. And for those of you who don't know, Miss Moretti is the director at the Robert McDuffie Center for Strings at Mercer University, which I can now proudly say is my alma mater after 4 years. In addition, she's had a very exquisite and stellar violin career, and today we have her for her to share her story with us, and we hope you enjoy it. So, aloha, Miss Moretti. How are you doing?
Aloha, Chris. You're so wonderful to be doing this, and with all that's going on in your life and with your festival. Anyway, I applaud you, and you just graduated. I'm so proud of you, and I couldn't be happier. So aloha, everybody.
Who knew I was going to make it, right? Just kidding.
I
know. I think, was it in the commencement video, was it during the Townsend ceremony, there was some comments saying that we don't know if some of these people were going to make it. And I was like, that sounds like me.
You totally relate. No, Chris, can I just say about you, Chris, with your time at Mercer and the McDuffie Center, the way that you dove into the business classes and took advantage of that side of the education, I was super happy with what you did with that. And then, you know, yeah. Of course, we were nagging you all the time. You better be in the practice room.
I know. Well, it was a great experience. I think the last 4 years really taught me a lot, and hopefully with this next step at graduate school, things will be even better. You know, big city now, just got to stay focused.
Yes.
But yeah. Anyway, so, wow, like what a time the last few months have been. I mean, we went from spring break to essentially spring break forever. Like that's it, and then we just transitioned right into
retirement.
Summer break. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, how has coronavirus affected your life specifically, like your career, your life, everything?
Well, look, I say retirement in jest. I feel like I'm very fortunate. Mercer University is on good financial ground. My career, I still have a job. You know, and I feel for all the people out there, and especially a lot of my musical colleagues who,
yeah, absolutely.
When concerts dry up, when there's not a venue open for us to go perform in, there's not work for them to be able to do. And so now I am fortunate, and I'm also at the stage of my life and with my family and everything. This has given me a chance to spend time with them. It's definitely an extended amount of time to spend with them.
For sure.
But I'm loving it. And my boys are young enough that this is actually, life altering in a way. This will be something that we'll look back on in the future, that we were fortunate to have this time together, this special time. But it's not easy, the transition to the online learning. I thought that Zoom and FaceTime lessons, I had not done a lot of it prior to COVID-19.
Sure.
And I wasn't sure how I was going to like it. It definitely surprised me that I figured out ways that I could be impactful as a teacher, and that I felt like the students were still improving. So it was better than I thought. And I'm hoping that we don't have to go into the fall semester continuing on this way.
Sure.
If we do, it will still be a good learning environment. We'll make the most of it. I always stay on the positive side of things. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm doing a lot of Sudoku these days. I love doing Sudoku, and I'm enjoying my morning coffee on the porch, and
Sure.
enjoying the cooler weather before it gets excruciatingly hot here in Georgia. But one of the hugest changes will be not traveling this summer.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, let's get right into that. I mean, when Mercer and essentially the whole world slowly just locked down, you had some pretty big performances coming up. I mean, obviously on our side, we had the orchestra concert, final chamber concerts, but on your side, you had your finale Beethoven marathon that you've been doing the last few years. But I'm sure there are other performances you were looking forward to in the next few months. Is there anything you would want to share that we were going to miss, or anything that you're sad about?
Well, one of the things, right at the time that New York shut down, you know, when the New York Phil had to close up shop, I was
Sure.
actually at the hall listening to violins with the concertmaster of the New York Phil the day before they stopped
Yeah.
performing.
Sure.
And I was in town rehearsing because my string quartet, the Ehnes Quartet, was about to perform the first half of a Beethoven cycle on a concert series in Old Lyme, Connecticut.
Oh, wow.
And this, because Beethoven's year, this anniversary year of 2020, it's been a big year for Beethoven, not only for, yes, me completing the violin
Sure.
piano sonatas with Andrew Armstrong, but doing the string quartet cycles with my quartet. And we rehearsed, and then all of a sudden it was like, we got to get out. We got to get out of the city, get back home to our safe zones. And so I was in town in March, the day before it shut down there. So that was kind of a big deal, important concert for me personally. And we're supposed to be doing some recordings this summer, and we have the second half of a cycle. We started a cycle, the Beethoven Quartet cycle in Seattle, and we've got a second half of that cycle coming up in July. And as of now, what is today's date?
May 28th.
28th. As of now, we're supposed to be going to Seattle to
Sure.
do some live stream concerts there as a quartet. So we'll see. And that's supposed to be the first week of July.
Awesome. Awesome.
And then we're going to record some of the quartets together. So that was a big project this year that, of all the things, you know, every concert's is always important, but that was something that very, very sentimental and personal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so with all this, I guess, uncertainty and in some ways discouragement, how have you kept like motivation for the violin? I know a lot of, you know, as a teacher, you must know a lot of the students feel kind of discouraged in some ways that like maybe music isn't worth doing because COVID has exposed, you know, flaws or a big hole in our profession that we've never seen. I mean, how have you dealt with keeping motivation and student morale and all that?
Yes, it's interesting now that we're on summer break. You know, everybody's kind of gone on their separate ways and would have normally gone off to summer camp. I love that I'm seeing that there's some summer online camps happening where students will still kind of all be practicing at the same time and this and that. But I hope people don't get discouraged. If anything, to become a great player, a great musician, great artist, you have to spend time with your instrument. And so my positive outlook on this is, wow, we have a lot of time now. And if I was your age, again, I think back on how much I was practicing then and without any other glaring responsibilities. Practice and continue to hone your craft. And I do think what we do is not something that's electronic. And maybe the future is going in this virtual reality, artificial intelligence direction. And here we are talking to each other this way. And so many people are doing online concerts. And
of course.
But our instrument, if that was the future, then maybe we'd all be playing electric instruments one day. And
absolutely.
I feel like we're gonna get through this, and people need music it feeds their soul. It inspires them. It relaxes them. It brings balance in life. And without music, life would not be
Yeah, absolutely. I
Wonderful.
definitely understand what you're saying. It's actually what I've sort of seen is, I don't know if you had this realization, it's just in some ways with COVID happening, I think musicians should be optimistic because I think now people are realizing, wow, like entertainment, live music, these were just crucial aspects in their lives that in some ways most people took for granted. Now that they're staying at home and just listening recordings and seeing these live streams, they're seeing how impactful our artistry can be. Do you think in a post-COVID situation, maybe there will be more appreciation and gratitude for the arts? Like I'm sure maybe in Macon it might be even more different now. But what are your thoughts on all that? Like, do you think it's a good optimism, or am I just being delusional?
No, I think you're on the right track, Chris. And I hope that's exactly what's going to happen. I do think that people miss being together. I think people miss being able to take in live music and not be watching it through a screen. I mean, our eyes can only take so much of this computer or television or whatever, the monitor, that the phone.
For sure.
You can only take that for so long. Things need to feel real. And I've been trying. I just read a book with my sons called Gamer Army. Because of course they game a lot, and so I see what's happening with the younger generation. But it talked about like artificial intelligence and how life, singularity, and are we going to become one with machines and this and that. I just can't imagine going to a concert, putting on some virtual reality things and going to a concert that way. I feel like attending a concert, hearing music, you have to be sitting near someone there. As the performer, from my vantage, from my perspective, I feed off of the energy in the hall, that what's happening between the performer and the audience, and it is not the same playing at a screen.
Yeah, definitely not. And actually, let's get into that. You definitely have performed a lot of concerts. I mean, your quartet, orchestra. I mean, I think you were former concertmaster of Oregon, former concertmaster of Florida, and now all roads have led you to being the director of a prominent string program. So in some ways, you've had it all. I mean, let's dive into that. How did your musical journey start? Like, were you inspired by going to a concert, or did you just pick up the violin and there was natural talent? I want to hear your story.
My story. Well, my great aunt played violin. And actually, I feel fortunate. I had music in my family. My parents were both musical, and my grandparents on my mom's side, my grandfather was a cellist, my grandmother was a pianist. So there's music in the family. But it wasn't until I heard my great aunt play the violin when we were visiting her in Crestline, Ohio, one summer, doing a family road trip. And I was probably 3 or 4, and heard her play violin. And that's when my parents asked me if I wanted to play. And I guess I said yes. The rest is history. But, I started playing in group lessons and then started privately at age 7 in North Carolina, and then doing Suzuki method.
Sure.
And then, age 12, went off to summer camp in New York. It was around age 12 that I think I realized that I may have had, or at least other people around me realized that I had something, maybe some talent there. And that's when things kicked more into high gear, like, okay, maybe she should practice a little bit more.
Well, I mean, and how did you have like a breakthrough moment as a child at the age of 12 when you were at this New York camp? Like, was it just like, wow, I'm surrounded by great artists, and now this is what I want to do. I'm going to devote my life and have a career in it? Or was it just slowly making you realize that this is something you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
Well, when I was 12, a couple things happened that year. I won a competition that gave me the chance to play a concerto movement with an orchestra. And so I did that performance, and I think that was something I do remember, feeling the energy of being up there on stage with so many people and that excitement of playing to an audience. And so that was kind of a moment like, this is pretty cool. And then I went off to Meadowmount summer camp, which is where you practice 5 hours a day and hang out with other people that are very similar to yourself. And so I think doing that summer camp gave me a lot of inspiration and motivation to practice, because I'd never practiced that much in my life before. But then once you're around other people that are similar to you, I think this is like this for anybody out there. Once you find people that have similar interests and tastes and motivation,
you feel a spark. You definitely can feel more motivated.
Exactly.
I mean, and then where did you end up going for college studies, or did you?
So when I was
conservatory.
16, when I was 16, I went off to San Francisco went to regular high school, but did the pre-college at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music.
Awesome.
And I mean, yeah, my story is really interesting. I almost went off to New York City to study because the same teacher at Meadowmount had wanted me to come up there. But when my parents evaluated all the options, there was a really nice environment in San Francisco for me to stay there. And my teacher, Zavin Malikian, was just incredible. And he continues to be a wonderful mentor for me now. And then after that, I went to the Cleveland Institute of Music and studied with Donald Weilerstein, and had really incredible chamber music coachings with the Cavani String Quartet and Annie Fullard, who you know.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. And then at Cleveland, it was in the middle of my master's degree that I won the Florida Orchestra Concertmaster position. So I jumped right into a career.
Awesome. So was orchestra always on your radar, or was it just something that, you felt that you had to follow in the textbook of becoming a musician? I mean, obviously as a bassist, it's pretty much the standard route, but I think as a violinist,
right,
it's not usually the not normal route, but just the average route that a violinist would normally take, right? To just jump from graduate student, to just jump from graduate student straight into concertmaster, yet alone orchestra job, right?
So when I was younger, I had the opportunity to play in different orchestras. I remember some really fun musicals that I sat in the pit orchestra and made a little money when I was young. And I'd watch the stage and watch all the people doing whatever singing and thinking, ooh, I want to be up on the stage, not in the pit. So that was like, I remember those feelings as a kid, or I loved the kind of the excitement of performing. Yeah. And then I got to be concertmaster of a couple of orchestras as a kid. And then chamber music really kicked in for me at a young age. And I feel so fortunate that I had that. So when I was before San Francisco even, but then San Francisco, I was in a very serious piano trio. And then when I got to college, my string quartet life was very full. And then I was always focused on solo stuff. So I was doing competitions, performing concertos and doing that kind of stuff. But chamber music was always kind of the thing that most interested me. I love the collaboration aspect of that. And so my story is a little bit different. I played orchestra, but it was never something that was like, oh, I have to be in an orchestra. Like that is what I want to do. And I think that I just always knew I was going to play. Somehow I was going to play the violin, whatever I was going to be doing. I was just having a good old time doing it. But I injured myself. I injured my left arm moving right after graduation. And from CIM, senior moment, just like you are, exactly at your stage of your life. I had just played a solo, the Mozart Fifth Violin Concerto in Carnegie Hall, and I felt like I was at the top of my game, ready to go out and hit the world running. And I moved a bunch of stuff in my apartment, and I got tendonitis in my left arm, my left elbow, and it just knocked the wind right out of me. I had never ever had any physical problem ever before. And then all of a sudden I had the tingles and all the stuff in my arm. So that I was supposed to go to Aspen that summer, right after my senior year. And I did end up going, but I just spent my time going to physical therapy and them doing ultrasound on my arm and trying to teach me exercises and trying to just relax my arm. I couldn't play. So there's about 6 months of my life after I graduated, kind of like what's happening here, where it was like, sure. I kind of blocked everything out. I don't remember a whole lot because I had that injury. And then I rehabilitated myself and came back stronger because I knew what an injury felt like. I mean, at least that's my positive on it. I wonder what life would have been like if I hadn't have injured myself. But yeah, I had to rebuild, and I went back to the basics of etudes and scales and arm positions, you know, all of this, taking a look at how do you stretches to do, how to take care of your body, what to eat, all those things. So anyway,
I think it's interesting. Like you mentioned injuries. Like I think musicians have had their fair share of injuries, and I think from your experience, you could definitely agree that you know, it is definitely physically exhausting, but it's also just emotionally, you know, emotionally exhausting. It is an emotional journey for someone to go through an injury, and especially when it comes to something like that, it's kind of similar to an athlete, would you say, where like if you have not a career-ending injury, but even just a slight ankle sprain, you feel frustrated and just like you question what you're doing, kind of thing, right? I mean,
right. Oh, I definitely had all of those thoughts. You're exactly right. I had those thoughts like, well, is this it? Am I going to have to figure out something else in my life? Is, you know, here I've been focusing all of my attention on the violin and music and surrounding myself with that. And now am I going to, is this it? And then you also have these thoughts about, well, all the people around me are able to practice. They're continuing to get better. And I'm just sitting here not doing anything.
Sure.
You know, so definitely that mental game that you play with yourself. Do you have those thoughts, Chris, if you don't wake up and practice that?
No, I definitely have those thoughts. But you know, thankfully, at least the last few years, being in a smaller school, it really allowed me just to tune out that kind of noise. Like all the paparazzi, or you know, in our profession, where it's like comparing yourself to every other bass player in the studio, kind of thing. You know, it was it was a healthy environment to just better ourselves and just tag along and learn from others. But
it's what you're saying is so important. You have to. That it's not so much about comparing yourself to others. Yes, use other people as kind of like, oh, well, I should keep myself going, but you find your own voice, your own importance in life.
Absolutely.
So, anyway, so.
But well, let's keep on going. I mean, you went from Florida, and shortly after that, you got Concertmaster of Oregon.
Oregon.
I mean, that's not, you went from this side to that side, but.
So I interrupted the story with my injury, but the only reason I told you about the injury is because it was at that point that I started thinking, what in the world am I going to do with my life? Am I going to be, you know, maybe I should think about getting something that then I'll have job security and all these things that that you start to think about after you've graduated from college. So it was brought to my attention that Florida orchestra job was open. And I thought, well, being a concertmaster, that actually, I loved, anytime I had the opportunity to do it, I loved leading the group. Being a concertmaster is a lot like chamber music. You're collaborating with others, you're collaborating with the conductor, but then you've got all of your people, you've got to have a blended sound in the orchestra. There are so many things that are similar to chamber music. I knew that then you have the opportunity to do solos. You have the opportunity to do chamber music outside of orchestra. So when that job came up, I think there was a little voice in the back of my head like, maybe I should just get a job. You know, it's time. And I think up to that point before my injury, I just was kind of on coasting like, okay, this is fun. I'm just going to do what, you know, I hadn't
Sure.
thought about the realities of life. But then I got Florida, and while I was in Florida, I just spent all my time practicing and learning orchestra music because I hadn't played any of it. Before taking the audition for Florida, I'd never learned any excerpts. So
Wow.
I practiced quickly and learned all the excerpts for that audition. And then Oregon Symphony audition came up, and I thought, well, that's a wonderful orchestra, and maybe the next step. And so, and that worked out. Moved to Oregon, and then it was while I was in Oregon, I had met Robert McDuffie before, or Bobby as we call him, or Mr. McDuffie for you. I had met him before and played with him. He had soloed with the Florida Orchestra before, but it was when he came to Oregon and played, we got to play some chamber music together, Chamber Music Northwest, and that's when I first heard about Mercer.
Awesome. And yeah, I mean, let's dive right into that. I mean, the program is fantastic. It's relatively young for what it is, like in terms of other music schools, but it's also very intriguing. I feel it is very well known to the right people, but at the same time, it's also this hidden gem in our world. What happens in Macon? I mean, so like you said, Mr. McDuffie approached you in Oregon, and then what made you just sort of take the leap of faith and just jump from having essentially job security to starting something completely brand new with Mr. McDuffie?
I think I was at a point in my life then that I had gone straight from school into orchestra and experienced so many wonderful things. I love the Oregon Symphony. I love the Florida Orchestra. Like I couldn't have been happier in either position.
Sure.
They were both wonderful jobs and wonderful colleagues and all of that. And I think it was at a point in my life where I thought, well, this sounds kind of interesting. I had started some chamber music camps, summer camps for kids before, younger kids. But I thought, well, this is something very different. To build a program like that seemed like an interesting opportunity. And I knew it would give me more chance to continue doing my performing, doing more chamber music, more solo stuff. And so I thought, I'm at the right age. This seems like if I took that leap of faith, as you're saying, and I do, it was kind of a leap of faith, that it was early enough in my career that I knew it was totally worth that gamble. And I knew that if I was going to go move to Macon, that we were going to make something spectacular out of it. And I couldn't be more proud. That was now, are we 13 years into it?
Wow, absolutely. Yeah, that all sounds great. I mean, as a director, have you now sort of seen a different sort of success? I mean, I've talked to a lot of teachers who, you obviously still have a wonderful performing career, but when you shift gears into professorship, into directorship, a lot of teachers have told me that once you shift gears, it's like your success is through your students. Like your main fulfillment is actually from the work you do rather than just your personal enjoyment of playing. Now, have you had that sort of same revelation with the center, or? I
think yes, definitely. When I see the students succeeding and the wonderful things that are happening for them, it really is a personal sense of satisfaction for me. Like I feel just as proud about that as when I have the moment to step on stage myself. Okay. If I'm truly honest with myself, my performing is so important to me. I need that so that I'm a better teacher.
Sure.
There are some teachers out there that don't perform anymore, or that they maybe performing wasn't even part of their life. They were so focused on wanting to help others get better, and they're amazing at teaching. Yeah. For me, part of what inspires me and keeps me, like I feel like I'm always on the cutting edge of things, is because I'm out there on the front lines performing and seeing what's happening in the classical music world. So it's both.
Yeah.
It's so fun. And like even watching what you're doing, Chris, I'm so proud of you, and it makes me so happy. And to think that you started something like your festival in Hawaii when you were still in college, like you were able, but that's just like anybody who goes out and gets a job at the coffee shop. Why couldn't you start a festival while you're in the middle of your degree, right? And you did it. So anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I was actually gonna dive into more the playing side of your career at the moment. I mean, obviously in the directorship role you control us, the students, and you handpick all your faculty. But there's another aspect of Mercer where you're curating the Fabian Series too, right? I mean, what is your approach to that? I mean, you have like incredible repertoire that's being played, but there's a dynamic between the artists that you seem to find, whether it's our own center faculty or just visiting artists. You create these like new relationships essentially for some people.
Right.
I mean, doesn't that also bring you a lot of joy and satisfaction in your career at the moment?
Yes. So what you were starting to hint at a little bit, I think, is kind of the boutique nature of the McDuffie Center. We're a small enough program that we are able to, I don't know if cater is the right word, but individualize the education for each student. So we want every student who gets their scholarship into the center to grow in their own individual way. And we want to give them the tools that they can do that. And part of that, I think, is the opportunity to hear other people perform, interact with them, get to play sitting next to them, get to play for whoever that visiting guest artist who played on the Fabian Concert Series, get to play for them in masterclass. Hear a mixture of music. All of those things are part of the education. So with the Fabian Series, yes, I try to, of course, we have amazing, our faculty is unparalleled. I mean, and they're all fantastic performers, and they're just the best teachers out there. I think that's inspiring for the students to see their faculty perform too.
Absolutely.
But then when I get to see the students performing alongside, or even when I have one of my students sitting in the, playing violin along with me in a group, the teaching that way is the hands-on teaching. That I think the students, I think, get more sometimes out of that than they might even out of their 1 hour lesson that they had that week. The actual sitting together, rehearsing, seeing how rehearsal process goes, and then performing. So that the Fabian gives the opportunity for us to do that.
Absolutely.
So that's the musical side of the boutique program at the McDuffie Center. But.
Well, it seems like all things are aligning well at the program. I mean, besides the success Mercer has had with it, and you and Mr. McDuffie with the program, it's just like, in some ways, what has happened is you guys have transformed the community of Macon, right? I mean, even on a smaller level, I think, was it one of the board of visiting board members is Mr. Jeff Batcher, right? And I have had lots of discussions with him, and his story of how he got involved with the center is essentially because of how well the center has been doing. I mean, he's on the board of DePaul, he's doing all the daybreak stuff, and then here he is on the board of a music school, right? So it's just like, how do you think the center has positively impacted the community of Macon?
So this is what arts and culture do for communities. When you have arts and culture and you have things going on, people want to be in those communities. They want to go out to dinner before they go take in a concert. So then they go into town. It creates a community, and it's a place where people want to raise their families because there are things to do that are interesting. And I do believe that when we started the center, it was part of the shift that's been the progress that's been happening in Macon. Downtown Macon is just flourishing now, and I hope with what's happening now with the COVID, and yes, this is going to slow things down for everybody. But Macon as a city, I'm very proud to call Macon home, and what's happening in downtown, in surrounding areas. And I do believe that having all of you, the students in town, and the impact that you have, whether it's playing for somebody's wedding, whether it's playing at Daybreak Homeless, the day center, whether it's going to the retirement community, whether it's playing at a school, the impact that the center students are having on the community is incredible. And I definitely am getting feedback from people that they're just so thankful that it's here. So yes.
Awesome. Well, and also on this topic of the center impact, I mean, I think this positive energy has led to momentum for other recognition of the program. I mean, I think alone in my 4 years was that we recorded a CD for a semester. We've been on NPR with Mr. Fred Child. We had our Carnegie Hall performance, but then I even heard before, it was LPR performances, or even just going down to Huntsville. Like, how has the program sort of transformed or impacted other communities, or I guess in the profession of music, in your opinion?
Well, we definitely have our tentacles stretching out to various places.
Sure.
I took a group of students down to Tallahassee and performed on a concert series there. And there's the Rome Chamber Music Festival that Mr. McDuffie does, where students get to go over there and perform and take in the culture and perform alongside other young musicians from around the globe and other professional musicians that aren't from the United States, to have that opportunity. So many things are happening. And, I could list the honors and the jobs that have been won by our past alumni. I feel like we don't have to prove ourselves anymore. Our students are doing awesome things, and the more students that we graduate, the more impact we're having on the rest of the world. But yes, we do get out there and perform as much as we can in various places. And I think Mr. McDuffie is always doing something super interesting and exciting. I know
definitely.
There's always something fun that's happening. There's never a dull moment, I would say.
Yeah. Well, okay, now let's shift gears a little bit. Obviously, you have this strong powerhouse with your role at the center, but outside of the center, you still have a very prominent performance career. I mean, like you mentioned earlier, you're in the Ehnes String Quartet. You're also in the Cortona Trio, but I've also seen your name pop up in like Honolulu Chamber Music Series, Bridgehampton Chamber Music Festival, or Chamberfest Cleveland. I mean, yeah, how is your performance career outside of Fabian and McDuffie?
Well, so I try to balance things. My McDuffie Center duties are, first and foremost, I need to be in town, on campus, making sure that everybody's doing well. But then I do have to get out there and perform. That's part of, staying on the front lines. So it's a balance for me, figuring out a schedule where maybe a couple of times a month I go out and do some performances. And I have wonderful places that I get to go and wonderful relationships that I've established with various musicians, various audience members, various people like that out there. So I know for someone like yourself, as you're just starting out, it's that relationship building, and every performance that you do, take it so seriously and so beautifully, like that. You never know who's going to be listening to you, who you're going to be playing with that might become a future collaborator.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So so for me, I try to keep my performing up, and balance it. Because not only do I have the center, but then I've got my family at home too. So
Yeah,
I'm not one of the people that's on the road, 300 days out of the year. That's not my life. But I feel fortunate that I get to perform and do some pretty spectacular things. And I take advantage of my summers. When you're a college professor, you do have time in the summer to also be able to do some festival traveling. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course this summer it's different. But
Yeah. Well, and let's go specifically now to the Ehnes Quartet. I mean, you've brought them to the center, I think twice, 3 times during my time, and obviously it's, the whole group it's like, you could arguably say it's like the Team USA of string quartets, right? I mean, it's as good as it gets. But how did that whole group, I guess, start? You guys all come from different backgrounds, different places, and then now you guys are just so together. You guys are just like another family, basically.
Right, we really are. Yes. I know you have your musician friends that feel just as close as family too. Well, so the first performance of the Ehnes Quartet happened in Macon, actually.
Really? Okay.
It's probably been about 9 years ago. I have to look at the exact date. Something like 9 or 10 years ago. Maybe 9. So James Ehnes and I went to Meadow Mountain together when we were 13 years old. So you never know when you're going to meet your future collaborators. But we went to summer camp together, and so it's interesting. It's the festival that he runs, the Seattle Chamber Music Society, that kind of brought all of us together in different ways. That's where I first played with Richard O'Neill, and also met Edward Aaron for the first time out there as well. But the quartet just somehow organically happened, where we knew we enjoyed playing together. And then it's like, well, this is so much fun. Why don't we find some fun places to go and play music? And I must say, it's pretty awesome to find people that you feel music so similarly, yet everybody has their individual voice, and I'm constantly inspired.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the quartet has also done successful, not just on the domestic scale, but just internationally, right? You guys have performed in like Korea. I'm sure you guys have gone to even like France, or you guys even have recordings that exist everywhere. Death and the Maiden Quartet, for example.
Right.
I mean, how do you guys feel about that kind of dynamic, where it's just like you guys finally see the fruits of your labor just blow up almost? Like it's like everything is going so well.
It's so nice. And we're different from your typical, maybe isn't the right word, but the typical quartet that practices together hours a day, and that's their life. We all have our individual lives.
Sure.
And when we get together, it's intense, and we love every second of it. We love every second of the intensity of the rehearsals and the concerts, and the pressure that we put on each other to perform at the highest level. And
yeah, absolutely.
We feed off of that. And making the recordings has been something really, really educational for me. I've done a few recordings here and there, but James, my colleague, my violinist colleague, has done, he's very prolific in the recording area.
A lot of recordings, yeah.
Yes, and I've learned so much from him, how to approach that. And here we're about to go into recording some Beethoven quartets this summer, and I think the only reason to do a recording is because you feel like you have something to say with the music. And so many people have recorded the Beethoven quartets. Why should there be another recording out there? But I do feel like we have something truly special to say with it. And so I'm excited to do it. That Richard, our amazing violist is going to be joining what I called a typical quartet. He's going to be joining the Takash Quartet, which is they're a great quartet, and he's going to have that lifestyle of rehearsing quartets all the time, and it works out wonderfully well for him to have something like that. But anyway, so we're going to miss him, but
well, I was actually going to dive into, I think there is an interesting parallel with something we've done at Mercer to sort of your chamber music life. I think it was about 2 years ago, we did a big collaborative event with the basketball team, and we saw how the dynamic of a team can really affect, the offense and the defense. And would you say that sort of that what the athletes do on their court translate to essentially what you guys do on stage? Because like you said, you guys aren't the typical quartet where you guys are rehearsing over and over. You guys have your own lives, yet you just come together and things just click. Would you say a chemistry thing that really helps you guys, or maybe the off the stage relations? Let me know I'll let you talk.
Right, and that was a lot of fun to do that with the basketball team. And have you been watching The Last Dance? Do you know who Michael Jordan is?
Michael Jordan, of course, absolutely.
So in this time of COVID-19, The Last Dance has come on, and it's been interesting to watch as, relating basketball team to music. And I watched something like that show and related to like a superstar of that level being able to elevate the team and, letting every player shine and communication. And so anyway, getting back. So when we went to do that so the basketball team came to watch us. Yeah. Mendelssohn Octet, right? That was the group that played for them. 8 players playing together, passing the melodies, and all of the we found all of the relationships between music and sports and team. Something like the quartet, the 4 of us have found each other, and we know that the chemistry, it's kind of like riding a bike. We know that we sit down together and it clicks. Now, when I go to play at various music festivals, it's always fun because you have to figure out how do you click with someone. Maybe you played with them once, maybe you're just meeting them for the first time. Maybe this person is a lot older than I am or a lot younger. Now I'm kind of in the middle of the road as far as age group goes at the festivals. I was always on the younger side, and now I'm kind of in the middle of the road. It's so you find how you use that word chemistry, how that works, and kind of what your role in the group is, whether you need to step up and say, give more ideas, or sit back and let things kind of happen organically.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and I think with basketball, it's interesting watching how the coach yells at the team a lot. that happens when you have a coach yelling.
Sure. Yeah.
When you're in college, right? You have someone. But you have to depend on each other to be playing at your very best, even when you may not feel perfect that day. You really rely on each other, and I think that's the same, on a sports team. You're reliant on each other, and so much in music, in chamber music, and orchestra, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Orchestra, you're a big old team.
With all this in your career, I mean, how do you juggle all the differences between the fame, the artistic authenticity, your personal life? Like, I feel like it can be overwhelming at times, right? With all this stuff happening in your life, and then now with COVID, you have more time to reflect. Have you given any thought on all of that, or do you have any ideas?
It's every day is it's an interesting time. I mean, that's It's a great question, and reflecting, obviously, my perspective on life, health, and my family is like, that gets to the root of everything, right?
Sure, absolutely.
I try to keep myself motivated to practice every day. And I'm exploring different music and listening to different things and pulling out pieces that I haven't played in forever. I'm trying to keep myself motivated that way. I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah.
If maybe some people are doing great. Maybe some people are loving it.
Sure.
But I am loving so much of because we're able to be together as a family, and I'm keeping in touch with friends. But it's hard. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's
really
not
is.
easy. And I can't wait to get back to performing. And that, oh my gosh, the first concert back, what is that going to feel like?
Sure. Yeah.
Have you thought about that? What is it going to feel like when you play for?
Well, I've been kind of thinking, just like, what kind of story do I want to tell after COVID, right? Because in some ways our concerts are memoirs or personal relations or personal stories. And I've just been thinking it's not necessarily about when I play or who I'm playing with, it's just what can we present to sort of make a comeback. It's kind of just like, the return of music. So that's sort of how my mind has been approaching it. But, with no foreseeable dates in the future, all we can really do is just practice. So that's what, I've just been doing in between all of this.
Yes.
Yeah. And actually, now we're slowly wrapping things up. I wanted to sort of dive into another question that might be a little bit thought-provoking. I mean, you've had so much success for musicianship, like for a musician's career. You've had, great teaching, great studying. You've had orchestra, concertmaster positions. You've had professorship. You've had chamber music. What's next? Is this like, would you say like, I'm happy, I can just grow on what I have, or is there another big thing you're hoping for? Is there another project you're going to tackle on? I mean, yeah, what do you think?
I think that there's a lot more that's going to come in my life personally.
Sure.
It's kind of like I think back on the beginning of the conversation when I was talking about when I was a kid, and it was like I just was having fun, and whatever happens. Mm-hmm. I still am approaching life that way a bit. Like it's,
sure.
How fortunate am I that I'm still able to make a career out of something that I love doing.
Sure.
As far as big projects, I know that there will be things. I'm constantly thinking about fun things that we can do at the McDuffie Center. And there will be other performance things that will be exciting. But I don't know. Yeah, what would be the next thing that I should do, Chris?
Well, I mean, I just think like you're at a point where maybe it's not necessarily about legacy, because obviously nothing is coming to an end, but it's just like what's more fulfilling? I mean, you've had success, but what's going to bring you, I guess, significance? I guess that's what I'm really asking. I mean, you have the teaching.
I guess this is an interesting thing to think about. And once you have children, that changes a lot of things. So maybe my greatest legacy will be my two kids.
Sure.
But in a way, I do the McDuffie Center, what's happening with those students. That's a wonderful legacy. And yeah, maybe in 100 years, people won't be saying, "Oh, Amy Schwartz Moretti did this." But you know, I'm trying to have a positive impact on the world, and even my little part. If I,
Absolutely.
if I've helped people to follow their dreams and find success, I don't need to have my name up in lights, huge.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm happy to.
That's awesome.
To have fun myself, to enjoy myself, get to do the things I love to do, and make music, and then also step back and watch others.
All right. So last question. If you had to give your final performance in your career, what repertoire and who would you want, or what would you play? Exactly. Anything. Super open-ended.
Oh my goodness. Chris. You have me completely stumped. I can't even imagine that.
Has there been a piece
like you're on the Titanic and it's sinking and the quartet is playing together?
No.
Oh,
no. Just, you're looking back and you realize you've had such an amazing career, and it's time for you to just focus on, maybe family or something. So,
yeah.
What would just be what message would you want to send?
There's so many. I can't just name one thing. I think it probably would be some sort of chamber music. You would be playing with others. My string quartet is pretty special. I think I'd want to include them in some way.
Sure.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. I don't know. Oh my gosh, I can't even. I don't want to think about the last concert ever. I hope that, I hope that I'm like 98. So like with the slowest, widest vibrato, still like if I can still play.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean it's good to sort of realize that you would want to play have very, I guess, longevity in your career kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, I'm not looking for the day when I'm going to retire and be like, oh yeah, now I can go out on the boat every day. And I mean, that would be nice, but
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. And I think we're just about out of time. For those of you tuning in, listening, and viewing, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, Miss Amy Schwartz Moretti is one of many artists we plan to have featured on this channel. And if you like what you heard, like what you saw, please like and subscribe to Broadcast Hawaii. And Miss Moretti, is there anything you would like to add? Any final thoughts?
I just want to wish everybody a wonderful summer. Stay healthy, stay safe. Don't do anything
unwise.
Crazy. Don't do anything crazy.
Well,
good luck, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Ms. Moretti. I'll see you back in Macon one day.
All right.